if there is to be any future, which means a future of humanity, a future of species continuing, and not always under the threat of Nazism, of climate catastrophe, of nuclear war, fascism, etc. If there is a future worth living, it would be a future that is not Western. The West has proven that it is incapable, even after colonialism, even after the Holocaust. It has not divorced itself from the things that brought these things about, white supremacy, and the logic of people being worthy of destruction everywhere. And so if we want to live in a world where people aren't just assumed to be disposable, we cannot live in a world that is led by the West, because that has been a central tenet of Western power, that the colonized peoples, colonized countries, colonized thoughts can be thrown away and supplanted with non-diverse Western unilinear way of thinking. Colonized poverty, colonized subjugation benefits the West. And so it is not so much that they have accidentally forced us in subjugation. It is written into the logic of Western world supremacy for there to be colonized subjugation and the removal of profits, removal of material, raw materials, of intellectual materials from the colonized world into the coffers of the West. There needs to be an alternative to Western world hegemony. And that in the wake of Western dominance, all sorts of life can exist just by not being in the stranglehold of capitalism and colonialism anymore. You would have new forms of life. But it might look like indigenous voices that are not relegated to museums and history books might actually say something about what new forms of social relationships can exist. Black people who are now targeted and put on the lower rungs of white supremacist racial hierarchies. Our black radical thought might actually say something about a way forward rather than it being something to be studied in the margin. The world would look like a world that does not have an addiction to the destruction of marginalized and colonized people. It would look like a world that says, obviously, if society is worthwhile, society would involve the protection of people historically targeted. And so a future, if there's supposed to be a future that is not climate destruction and the third wave, or fourth now, wave of Nazism, then it is a future that is not Western.